Welcome to week 7. All right, we talked about free will last week, and we're moving on to ethics now. There'll be ethics the rest of the way. All right, so not too many of you wanted to talk about the Frankfurt cases themselves. Audrey posted on it. Among other things, she said that she thinks Jones would only be more responsible if he chose the action himself that Black wanted him to do. That's actually the way that Frankfurt set it up. So he's at the voting booth and he's got the chip in his brain, but Black doesn't have to do anything because in the end, he ends up voting for the candidate Black wanted to vote for anyway, right? And so it's supposedly he couldn't have done otherwise, and yet he still did it himself. That's how it's supposed to be. It's actually more so is it really true that he couldn't have done otherwise? That I think is the rub with Frankfurt cases, because he could have done something such that Black had to trigger that chip. So I think that's really where the interesting conversation is. Okay, is determinism true? Determinism is the claim that everything you do is determined before you're born. Everyone on Benjamin's thread thought that determinism is false. Jackson had another thread where determinism is false. Most of what you're saying boils down to I can just tell that my actions are free. So Michael had an interesting response to that. He said that the feeling could be deceptive, basically is what he's saying. And actually also threw out the idea that maybe even if we had souls, that souls would end up being predetermined kinds of things. This is actually one of those original debates that goes way back. So you're onto something. Isn't it the case that your choices are predetermined by your beliefs and desires? Is the way that debate was usually framed. And so that's why I think I had it in the overview video, talked about how maybe you have different kinds of desires, moral desires, and I don't know, just they might be in tension, and that's where the soul would jump in. But yeah, so that is an interesting question though. Brenda also introduced the idea that maybe quantum mechanics introduces, well, it would introduce indeterminacy, randomness. But randomness is not the same thing as freedom, right? But there are definitely, you might wonder if maybe if it's not determinist, then we got that one step further, and this is kind of the realm where free will affects things or something like that. But yeah, quantum mechanics on its own would not be the same thing as a free agent. All right, so regarding then if determinism is true, does anything matter, right? Should we punish criminals at all? Do we have meaningful lives at all? Most people who talked about punishing criminals basically end up pointing to that it's still important as a deterrent, right? So Malia had that type of response. A few things you could say about that, right? But one thing that I didn't really see on the discussion board that's worth thinking about is, what about the cases when it's not a deterrent, right? What about if there really was a genuine case where someone, where it wasn't going to stop anyone from doing anything in the future and no one needed reforming? Does justice still demand it, right? It's hard to say justice demands it when no one's to blame, right? Because there's a predetermined thing. So I guess really what the deeper question is anyone blameworthy if their actions are all predetermined? But predetermined here, I'm mostly thinking in the libertarian sense, and the hard determinist sense. Compatibilism, of course, is that other side of discussion. Yeah, I think that's enough for now. Yeah, we will continue on now. The rest of the way is ethics, and towards the end, I'm actually going to give you a chance to vote on a topic or two. But we will just start off with ethical theories.